Okay, so we're talking about book 2 teaching points. Let's have. What am I doing?
She thought your coat was a dead dog.
It does look like a cockapoo, doesn't it?
I thought it was amazing how you took it out of your tiny rucksack.
I was just worried, I thought, please don't tell me it's a dog sleeping. Sorry.
Lovely.
Okay, so we're going to play Judas Maccabeus and I'm going to talk about it. Beautiful, lovely big sound, well done. Okay, have a seat. So if you look on the WhatsApp group, you can see the picture of my music. Thank you, Kit, I think.
Yes,
Put
Kit.
them all on there.
First kick.
No, I did level 1. I didn't do level. I don't have level 2.
Okay. Is it on there? It might just be on last year's, so we might need to move it over.
Can I ask a question the Judas? Do you do the G string generalization?
That's a very good point, thank you. So, like book 1, get the parents and maybe read it with them. Let's read it together, what's on page 4, and then we'll get to that. So, number 4, preface. Strings have no soul, they can only sing the heart of the one who plays them. My ultimate realisation after half a century of meditating on tone is that strings only sing the heart of the one who plays them. Strings are mindless entities, they produce sound through the physical act of vibration. At each lesson I say, put your heart into your tone, your spirit into your tone, because our entire personalities are revealed in the tone we produce. To make music is to serve the strings, to create a beautiful resonant tone, to sing with one's heart and the living spirit of music. So I think that is a really inspiring thing that you can share with the students and their parents. And also, in a very practical sense, the way that every child plays their violin and the way that you would play their violin will make that violin sound different. It's not just what instrument we play that makes our sound unique. And Joe, I remember you talking about saying to the student, now can you make it sound like you? What can you bring to this that is separate from what anybody else can bring? And so I think that's a really nice way to kind of connect them to Dr. Suzuki and also to think about, you know, what can you bring that is entirely you to this sound? And of course, part of that is how well in tune can you play and how beautifully can your tone be produced? How much relaxation can you bring from your body? You know, think about the technicalities that then make it able to kind of show you. So then, moving on to the technicalities, the bow is what causes the strings to produce sound. When we experiment with various ways to bring the bow to life and serve the bow when drawing sound from the strings, this is when the strings will resonate beautifully and without distortion, enabling us to play with gentle ease, enjoyment and beauty. This is also a philosophy for living. It may be said that the essence of violin playing is to bring the bow to life and serve that bow. In human terms, if one lives a self-centered, egotistical and immature way, one's life will be that of no joy and constant dissatisfaction. In other words, because of selfish needs, what one creates will be nothing but noise. In contrast, when one lives by the principle of serving the hearts of others and learns to live for other people, one can enjoy a life of light without discord, in harmony with others, and walk through life in pure joy. Similarly, the ultimate goal of music education, as well as the secret of violin playing, is to guide others away from the world of self-centeredness to that of loving hearts in the service of others. Beautiful tone, beautiful heart. I believe that the proper aim of music education is to strive to pursue this philosophy in daily life. Please nurture your children to be happy and joyful human beings who will be loved by all, love all, and live for others. The philosophy of violin playing is the same as that for life. Man, like the violin, can only sing the song of his own heart. So, that's quite a lot to unpick, and I think that obviously the amount of teaching that we do about that kind of philosophy of living for others will vary, person to person, teacher to teacher, student to student. But I do think that, that converts extremely well into, basic understanding of how to live a satisfying life in terms of getting on with other people. Maybe service to others is a bit strong for us.
Christian.
As a kind of idea, but certainly if we think back to the conversations that we've had about group lessons, what are you teaching in group lessons that is not musical? All of that stuff about cooperation, about taking care of others, about learning positive psychology, about how to encourage your peers, about how to be a part of a group that works together towards a common goal. All of those things are, really part of what we're doing, right? However loosely you want to take the philosophy in with your teaching. If you basically don't think that that's part of what you're doing in group lesson, then you just haven't thought about it. You can't teach a group lesson, you can't be in an orchestra without learning on one level or other how to function as a group and how to work together towards a common goal. Beautiful tone, beautiful heart. I mean, there's been lots of discussion about this, which we're not going to have now, but if you can truly be a wonderful musician and an awful person, sadly it's been absolutely proven that you can be an awful person and a wonderful musician. But I think the thing about how we can talk to our students about their tone is how can you show the beauty of your heart. Every child has a beautiful heart. Through your playing, and that can be part of where the self-expression of playing comes in, because it's quite easy, I think, for the children to not really express themselves, not really feel like there's anything of them in their playing, that they're just doing the same thing as everyone else, they're part of the group, they're part of the Suzuki kind of world, and that individuality can kind of get lost a bit, so I think that's a nice way to have those conversations.
I think one thing that the classical music world doesn't necessarily teach, but Suzuki does, is the humility aspect. Humility, yeah. How to be humble. With it. That's the only thing.
I think some kids, not all.
Some teachers, not all.
Most Suzuki kids, but I've met a couple before I came to Suzuki fold who I thought, bitch. Because there's more arrogance than humble.
Yeah, and every teacher cannot teach every student of theirs all the things they want to teach them. I've definitely had students that I think are arrogant, and as much as I've tried to get the balance a bit better between self-confidence and humility and arrogance and how they all play into one another, if you're only with them a couple of hours a week, you can't really, there's a family culture of that, you can't override that necessarily. So, study points for Volume 2. The student should listen to the recording every day at home to develop musical sensitivity. Rapid progress depends on this listening, and your understanding of what they're doing at home depends on you asking them. To go back to the practice thing, you can only know how practice is going and how listening is going if you really ask. And I don't just mean, How was practice this week? Oh, it was fine. Oh, good, great. And listening? Yeah, good. Like, that tells you absolutely, literally nothing, apart from the fact that the parent feels good about it. That's all it tells you. So please ask. Tonalisation, or the production of a beautiful tone, should be stressed in the lesson and at home. And I think I've said before that 90% of my lessons start either with twinkle or with tonalisation, so we are going to talk about that in a minute. Bless you. And constant attention should be given to accurate intonation, correct posture, and the proper bow hold. Good. Okay, and then you can read that in many different languages if you would like to. And there's, I think, pretty much unhelpful, page 8, positioning of the left hand. I mean, it is kind of useful in certain ways, but I find the colour thing from Barbara much more useful than that. And then tonalisation. So my students will learn the major tonalisation in G around the minuets. So they know that already by book 2. And pretty early on in book 2 they would do the minor one. Obviously we've got the 2 grenadiers coming up. And so doing that minor tonalisation is really helpful. To be honest, I don't do a lot of the tonalisation in C. It's not as resonant. I don't have a lot of places where we're playing with cellos. Like if orchestra had more cellos in it, we would probably do that. But you know, I think that for the violin, the G one is the one that really makes the difference. And then the point of resonance stuff on page 9. When playing octaves or the same pitch in unison, if one of the pitches is an open string, the location of the pitch that causes the open string to resonate most fully is called the point of resonance. Who knows what that means? I mean, basically, it's like put your finger in the right place and then it'll be in tune and it'll ring. It's not a very well phrased sentence, that one. The exercises below are for learning to listen for the beautiful sound of the strings. So, you know, we're all familiar with those exercises about watching the G string vibrate when you're playing D3, about getting the students to hear whether they can hear the extra sound or not. That's what this is about.
Ringing notes.
Yeah, exactly. I talk about that stuff a lot, mostly as a part of improving intonation within a piece or within tonalisation, rather than do these exercises on page 9. But of course you can.
Do you
I think exercise 4 is useful.
2 bows on each ringing note for tonalisation?
No, I tend to do quite slowly, like which isn't really correct because it's in 2/2, not 4/4, but sometimes we'll do 2 bows or even 4 bows if they're particularly working on finding tone or intonation better than they're doing currently, but yeah, it tends to be that. Okay, so Judas Maccabeus is essentially about what, Devon?
Tone?
Exactly. It's like tonalisation, really, isn't it? It's a tune, but it's essentially a tone exercise. And it's got, one of the nice things you can do with the students is to count how many of the notes are resonant notes in the piece. And you know, even if we just do the first line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in just the first line. So like basically nearly all the piece is resonant notes, i.e. E, A, D or G. To get that tone, you need big bows. You need your ringing notes. And there is one sort of tricky part of this piece, which is the beginning of bar 13, which always goes in a box. My box goes from 11 to the end of the following line. And then occasionally the second line needs to be in a box for the slur, or remembering the bowing, and the crescendo up to the top G. It does come down to mezzo forte for the middle 2 lines. I think lots of teachers forget that because we think of it as being a big tone piece. But if you are going to pay attention to what's really in the music, it's important to recognise that. So in terms of how you're teaching, what are going to be one of your big helpful things for explanation about this kit. What do you think you might want to talk to the parent about in terms of making the most beautiful tone you can?
Reading throughs.
Good, excellent. And Joe, what else?
Sorry, I missed the question.
What else are you going to want to explain to the parent in terms of helping them work together with their child to get the best tone? What tool are you going to give them?
I'm going to give them tonisation or twinkle theme.
Yeah, good. That's
Sure.
that's kind of an extension of what Kit said, isn't it? That's about finding the ringing threes in terms of
G major.
Yeah, G major. In terms of how you're going to explain how tone works to them, you can just imagine me walking towards the board, and then you'll all know what I'm talking about.
Right. Being in exactly the right spot.
Yeah. What would you draw on the board for them or in their book?
Triangle.
Yes, the tone triangle. Congratulations, Kit.
I was
Exactly
not there
right.
saying
You have to talk about the tone triangle. I'm constantly amazed by how even my book 4 students, who probably talk about it once every 2 or 3 weeks with me, and not even just like in passing, like remember your tone triangle, but okay, let's fill the tone triangle in, still need a few seconds to think about what is in it. And you know, they're the ones playing the instrument, so if you think about their parents, it's really easy for them to forget this stuff, and you just need to go over and over and over and over about it. And I think one of the things that's really helpful in terms of tone is to just demonstrate what can happen if each of the bits isn't right. So what's at the top of the tone triangle, Devon?
I can't remember.
Okay, one of the things in the tone triangle?
Speed of the bow.
Very good, speed of bow. So all of the parents will understand very quickly that if you're using too much speed, that's the problem, that it skids, right? It just makes sense. And if you're not using enough, then it crunches because it's too slow. That's like really, they've done a lot of that in book 1. That's the kind of most basic way that we play the violin, isn't it? Like by how much bow you use, how fast you use it. Kit, what else is in the tone triangle?
Weight.
Exactly. And the 2 parts are from?
I always get this one.
Then teach me if you can't remember. How shall I add weight to the bow?
The squeeziness between.
Excellent. So squeezy hand, very good. And then?
Heavy elbow.
Heavy elbow, exactly. You do know it. Very good. So that is the thing that I think, you know, we really start to develop during book 2. A lot of kids are not really thinking about the smiley bows. We might talk about it during book 1, particularly in the minuets. We're talking about it, but it hasn't become a kind of automatic thing yet. And Judas Maccabeus is like the perfect place to introduce that really physical understanding. Well, not introduce, develop that really physical understanding of how, you know, getting into the string works. Yeah? And then the contact point is the thing that many parents haven't even considered in book 1. Most of us don't teach anything apart from just staying in the middle in book 1. In book 2, I tend to stay in the middle until towards the end of the book, and then we would do, in review, we would start to change the contact point in waltz. But in terms of if you're troubleshooting, if the child's not making a nice sound and the parent doesn't understand how to help them, I think this is a really good explanation of why straight bows make such a difference. So, you know, basically, just eyes on me for a minute, the problem with not straight bows is that you're changing the contact point all the time, right? It's difficult to kind of remember that that's the same thing, explained in a different way. So what I say to the kids and the parents is, right, well, if you have this sound, right, when you move your bow completely away or towards the bridge, that's the sound that you're getting. And so when you are playing your bow not straight, like that, part of the reason it sounds bad is because you're mixing this in with the perfect straight bow. And that's a bit like if you make a cake and then you chuck a whole bottle of, you know, vinegar in it, it's going to sound gross because even though there's all the good stuff in there, not sound gross, it's going to taste gross, even though there's all the good stuff in there, you've added something that really is disgusting. And you might not even know, vinegar you would know, but you know, if you put something in there, you might not even know what it was. Like my student the other day was, she's so cute, she was She's like if I was making a cake and I accidentally poured all of the flour onto the floor and then I just swept it up and put it and just carried on making the cake, then you probably wouldn't know that what was making it taste disgusting was the dust from the floor, but it would taste disgusting. And I was like, that's great. So this is a bit like adding the dust in the cake, right? And so when you're talking to the parents and the students about it, that's why you want to ask them if they could imagine staying on one single loop of the string, and that this distance would be exactly the same all the way through, because that's the bit that often they know if it's crunching it's too heavy, they know if it's skidding it's too fast, but they may not understand that if it's just making that funny noise, it's because there's a bit too much of that happening. And it may also be that they're on a really terrible violin, or that the string needs changing.
Or 4 hairs in the bow.
Yeah. Exactly. So my tick boxes for Judas Maccabeus are tone, big bows, ringing notes, and box. Or boxes if you've got more than one. And let's just all play from bar, whatever it was I said, 11. So this is the only real left-hand challenge of the piece in terms of a moment that can go wrong, rather than just the intonation being a challenge all the way through. And obviously how much of a challenge that is depends on how good their intonation is generally. But let's play from here. Yeah, then we're going to talk through what happens in the retake. Okay, so as your bow is in the air, what I want you to do is stretch your 3, bearing in mind most children will have a 3 tape still, so they can very easily see where the high 3 goes, because it's just above where their normal 3 tape is. And then they place the 4 best friends with them, and then they're ready to play the next part. Good, and lots of them will need help with that, with getting smoothly to the E string, so you can practice it like this, and then add the slow. But I think for most of my students, the issue is solved by the high 3 going on first. As long as they put high 3, 4, then they're in tune, they've got the right finger pattern, and the rest comes fairly naturally.
Would it be fair to say if you reach for the 3 while the 2 is still down, if that helps them?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Try it, I've never tried it. Yeah, good idea. I think it depends. Some kids love to keep their fingers on, don't they? And other kids hate it. So I think if you've got a child who loves to, then that's probably brilliant for them. And if you haven't, probably is adding a layer of extra difficulty that they don't need.
But yeah, you went through.
Good idea. The other thing about what's in the book is that I want my students to play the 4s that make sense musically from as early as possible. In any musical choice that you make in the repertoire, you are balancing whether you're going to use it like an exercise or a study, or whether you're going to do what you would do as a musician, or the most musically kind of sensitive or appropriate choice. So like we can say, oh, it's horrendous that all of the, like for example, Handel slow movements go so high up the A string, they would never have played it like that at the time, and then you could just teach it all in first position. Or you can say, well, because there's not very much music in the repertoire that does go high, I'm going to teach it as a place for them to practice going high up the A string, even though it's musically a bit ick. That's what we're going to practice in that section, and then you can kind of justify it that way. Neither is wrong, but for me I want them to play the music as musically as possible, and if that leaves gaps that need to be filled in terms of the repertoire or exercises, I would rather fill that with studies and other pieces outside of the repertoire, but it's a personal choice. So I would never play, well not never, if I was going for that kind of more baroque sound, which obviously we're not going full baroque on this piece because we're doing lots of sustained notes and big sound, but in bar 15, I would not play 1, 4, 3, because I like the open string sound. I think it's hard for them to get the 4 from the 1, and I'd rather that they practice their 4s in other pieces, so I use an open string there. Same on bar 7, same on bar 10. But you can say to them, right, we're treating this as a build your fourth finger strength and accuracy piece, and do all of those fours that are printed. It's up to you.
We go back and do it as a vibrato piece. You could have the fours.
Yeah. Good. Any questions about Judas? Excellent. Musette. What would you say Musette is there for? What's its main purpose?
Shaping of them more or less.
Yeah, and even as a more general statement, that would be
Phrasing.
yeah, exactly. This is a really beautiful piece that can teach you about shaping your music and about how phrasing can work. It also obviously is building different bowing patterns. It's a memory challenge. It's working on starting up bows that are not, fast and sort of, it's not an upbeat like Happy Farmer. So the boxes for me are tone, intonation, bowing, boxes, dynamics and fours. And phrasing I just write sort of like this because it's not really something that they get a tick for as such, but it is the kind of main point of the piece.
Can you repeat the boxes again?
Tone, intonation, bowing, boxes, dynamics and fours. My students often have quite a few boxes in this piece. I do ask them to do the fours there, partly because I don't want to listen to loads of open E's in the middle of that nice phrase, and partly for them practicing getting to a four without other fingers helping. And then we have from there, which we were singing the other week. It's really helpful for them to practice being aware that it goes sla, 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 separate, sla, 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 separate, up, down. And it's also tricky with the four and all of those string crossings. And then the very end, I sometimes need as a box the first time they learn it, just for fitting four in with those string crossings, 4 notes. But definitely in review that would become a box because I teach them the harmonic for the last time, which means that you do have to kind of organise your bow and your fingers differently. Because they got the string crossing onto the D, which they haven't done before, they've got the harmonic to find, which they haven't done before, and they've got to slow the bow speed and the tempo. Let's play Musette.
Why do you do that? The harmonic in review.
Why do I not teach it first, or why do I teach it
Why
at
do
all?
you teach it?
To get them starting shifting. They really like it. And to become more good at harmonic ahead of occarina. Okay. learn it, but they may be in a group where they've been doing shifting. They might have been doing harmonic allegro, which is this one to remind you. So if you have, you might just have a student who can just put it in straight away, but for most of them it's good to do a review. And the boxes are there mostly to help them remember the bowing and to practice the dynamics.
Would you start teaching, when would you start teaching the harmonic allegro, harmonic control and the sliding?
Anytime from the beginning of book 2, well, anytime from the minuets to the beginning of book 2, really. Slidey's book 2.
Yeah.
But harmonics, yeah, maybe a bit earlier. They're fun things to do in groups, so then it does inevitably mean that some kids will learn it earlier or later. Good. I think just about the box at the end, when you are practicing it as a harmonic, but even when they're just doing it for organising their bows, it's helpful to teach it like this. Especially this one, because they've got, as they do that last bow, they've got to get everything ready for going over to the D string. So that can be very helpful. One of the things that happens with that is that it's too loud and they often need to see this. Like they just can't kind of organise their bow to fit those notes in. So separating them can mean that you are really helping them with that. I personally find the number of students who can play, and the number of adults who can play, accurately is very low, and fourths are really hard, and they don't tend to sound very nice. And I don't really think, I think octaves are really great to introduce at this point, but like, for me, asking a student to do perfect fourths at this level, I can't remember the last time I did that. I think it's a bit much. I think it can be helpful for you to work with them on it in a lesson to kind of show them. But, most of my students, in terms of finger tapes, really my kind of approach tends to be that I've got 1, high 2 and 3 during book 1. We will often put a dot for 4 when they get to perpetual motion, or we start preparing for the 4s in perpetual motion. And then the first tape that comes off, would anybody like to have a guess? Don't say if you already know. Which tape do you think would be the best to take off first?
3.
Why?
Because I should know the ringing.
Yeah, because you can use the ringing. I don't actually do that because the 3 tape stays on the longest because of shifting. But I think that's a very good answer. I take the 2 off first because if you still have the 1 and the 3 tapes on, you can always see where the 2 needs to go. There's no space right in the middle, so that you either put it next to the 3 tape or you put it next to the 2 tape. And so by the time they get to here, they will probably still have 1 and 3 and maybe a spot for 4. And I would give them a spot for the harmonic and just make sure they realise that the harmonic is light, all of the stuff about harmonics, but also that it's not accurate like a finger tape is. There's quite a lot of leeway with the harmonic, and it can depend on how you look at it whether it appears to be in tune or not, because it's obviously away from the fingerboard. If I've got like a note cruncher student who really loves to play extra things, I will set these exercises at the beginning. I do use them later on in the books for the shifting. So these ones. I think they're really lovely. I think they sound quite nice. But if you've got a student who's really struggling to fit everything in, I kind of feel they're a bit of an optional extra. I would rather that my students do tonalisation major and minor than, chomping through all of this. And at the end of that page, I have teach minor tonalisation. So again, some of them might have already done it. They may have done it in group, you may have done it already But if you haven't, this is the last point at which you want to make sure that you have done the minor tonalisation, because otherwise Tu Benedictus is coming too soon. Right, let's do Hunter's Chorus and then we'll have lunch. Shall we play? Any questions on any of that? Good. Yeah, let's tune. About teaching points, can I just show everyone what you had from Musette?
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful to go through and have these headings like this. So you've got the structure, credit boxes, overall teaching points, preview boxes, bowing development and left hand, and then reviews. So that's where you would put pieces that would help you prepare for that piece.
I've got something similar for me.
Yeah, but I'm not going to give you each of these answers when we go through the teaching points. A lot of this stuff I would expect you to go through and work out yourselves. So if you have questions about any of that you are not sure what it is, then do ask me. But generally when we do teaching points, I'm expecting you to kind of fill in the gaps at home.
Okay. What's the last two?
So bowing development, left hand development, and review. So for example, if you're talking about long ago, book 2, review would be the minuet, because it's got the ups. So like the pieces that help you get that piece better.
Okay.
Yeah? Good. Thanks, Kit. Okay, Hunter's Chorus, please. So we're starting in the middle because there's not a huge up bow, and if you do use too much bow, you're going to be skidding about. I don't know why I just put my line down. So the main teaching point of this piece, or teaching points of this piece, what do we think?
Control bow speed.
Yeah, loads of different bow speeds and complicated slurs. Yeah.
Circle action.
Good circle action for big tone, so that's the right elbow.
And then da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah,
Big circles, little circles.
exactly. Although those aren't really circles, they're sort of more exaggerated circle action, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is another reason for calling retakes, not circles, then you know which one you're talking about.
Circle action rather than circle.
Yeah. The bowing is tricky to remember, so you're getting more memory challenges. And I mean, most of the kids just love to play this piece because it's really fun. But it is packed with technical things. So in terms of the boxes, tick boxes, tone and intonation, which I basically just always put in there, at least in the first 2 books. Sometimes you will need posture, but that depends on each student. Memory, boxes are always in there. Staccato, string crossing, and hunter style. So the practice boxes, definitely you want the first, and I would definitely teach this hooked first, because some children will still be finding that their 2s are not reliably in tune, so you need to really place the 2 carefully. The string crossing is hard, you'll hear lots of that. And that string crossing is also at the tip, which makes it more tricky to really catch the A string. So you definitely want to do 5 hooked and then 5 slurred. And the same for bar 15 and a note. That's really, you might even want to do it separated and open strings, because that sort of dip down to the D and then back to the A is really tricky. So like that, and then. So I think it's more likely with that one, well, both of them, that you might set a week of hooked and then they might start doing 5 hooked, 5 slurred. Then they'll do the 2, one after another straight away. Well, 25 and 26 is really difficult for them to keep the 2 away from the 3. I teach that lifted in review rather than the first time through, but it is up to you. If you do teach with a lift, well, rather when you teach with a lift, what you get a lot is this. They can't quite work out how you would do a lift without a retake, because it's the first time they've really done that. And also you hear this a lot, where they can't really work out that the A string is actually in the string, and then there's a lift. So you've got to just be really careful. I would teach it on open strings like this. And then they can gradually work towards getting it faster.
So you're not landing each time?
No.
Okay.
It's too fast.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were thinking about when you play it. It's too fast. So yeah, this is the first time that they're really practicing that coming at speed from the air. Another reason to do it in review, not in the first time that they learn it. But again, lots of kids will just do it with a lift because they've seen someone do it in group, and whether it's successful or not will depend on the child, and then whether you want to teach it, whether you need to fix it or whether you want to teach them to stay on the string and then do it later is up to you and will change from student to student. One of the things that's very inconsistent in how the Suzuki books have been printed, which I find frustrating, is when they write down fingers to hold on or hold down, and when they don't. Like if you look at Long Long Ago variation, they've printed in brackets the 1. And actually it's not long enough, it should be longer anyway, and then some of the 3s and some of the 2s, but they're not other bits. And actually, like, if there was ever a place to really print that you need to keep your finger on, it would be 31 and 32, because you really can't get that fast enough if you're going to pick your 1 up. You just hear a load of kind of extra noise. So you definitely want this 1 with the line underneath those 2 lines, like that. And that's got to be a box because they have not done anything that fast and difficult.
That's the end of bar 33, isn't it?
Yeah, 32, bar 31 and 32. Review Song of the Wind, but in D major for that, because if they have done that properly, that's literally the same notes in a different order, different rhythm. And of course, stop pony for 21 and 22. You want quicker bows. The accents need a thumb pinch. You can review allegretto for that. And do practice taking the bow for the flourish at the end. If you are a teacher who has taught a lot of staying on the string at the end of the piece in book 1, which is fine, bless you. This is definitely somewhere where you want to not do that, because to play it's just really like, it's not in the keeping of the piece at all. So, and this is a good time to really teach them holding the pose at the end, ready for solos and things. How long do you hold for? I often say a count of 3. I don't sort of say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, just, you know. I'm hoping that lots of them will start to feel that by then, really. So again, back to 4s. I don't play the 4 at the end of 15 because I think that I want them to practice the string crossing more than the 4 in that, but you can. And during this piece, your preview for what's coming next is prepare down, up twinkles like this. Ready for long, long ago variation. So actually that would be a good thing to add to your teaching points preview at that point, like not specifically for that piece, but what preview you're going to do at that time. And like I've said before, with your teaching point books, like what you've got, really the most important thing about these are that they are your manual for teaching in future. That if you think, I'm sure there's something that someone said about what to do during whatever piece, that you go back and it's there, rather than that you just try and remember and succeed or fail. And so if you're doing, you know, when we review a level that you've already done, like book 1 for you 2 and these 2 books for you 2, you know, no one's going to inspect these in your exam, but add what you think is helpful for you. And if that means that you've got so much that you need to rewrite it so that it's legible, that's fine. And if it means that you just scribble a little bit of extra stuff on, that's also fine. Good. Okay, is that good for everyone? Don't forget to look at the bits at the bottom there. They can be really helpful for the parents. Obviously, we understand if you're going to use an open string, you need to cross out that 4 on the second exercise. Oh, that is an interesting thing. The second line of those exercises, for those, it says to put down 1 and 3.
Yeah.
I don't teach that myself because that's exactly what my fingers just did. I hear that too often. I want them to practice getting the 2 and 3 a tone apart. But I think, you know, it's either you're practicing the skill of putting the 2 next to the 1 and then picking them up together, or you're practicing the skill of practicing the 2 away from the 3 and making sure that it's in tune. So each is valid, and you may choose to do different things for different students, or you might just decide this is the skill that I always teach there, like I do.
Or do it with the fingers first, and then say, well, now you've got it, you can do it without putting them both down.
Yeah, mix them up.
With bar 21, the crescendo, should the bow location be? As in,
Oh,
middle of the
well,
bow, or-
it's interesting, isn't it? Because have a look at bar 21. There isn't actually a crescendo, is there?
No.
It's just what we put in.
Yeah.
And
Generally.
there isn't a dynamic drop from the beginning, because that's why I went and looked when I was playing. I was like, we all just came down. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
and it's not quieter.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good moment to introduce the idea that, as you know, going back to that discussion that we were having about what you can bring yourself, that just because Weber put a forte at the beginning, he may well not have done any of the dynamics, but you know, if there is one forte at the beginning and then one fortissimo during near to the end, does that mean that that's literally what dynamics you'll play the whole piece through? No, it doesn't. So where do you think it should come down a bit? Okay, well you choose, right? If you want to play, you know, like an echo. That's not how we tend to hear it, but it's valid as a choice. Or if you decide, yeah, that the section you were just talking about should come down a bit, and then we have more of a crescendo back into bar 23. I think this is a nice place to do that with the students. It really empowers them to make some decisions of themselves, of their own, and also, you know, to be more musical. So in terms of the bow, no, I would say that we're at the middle for that up bow. Yeah, and then if you do want to add a dynamic change, that's fine, and you just start smaller and get bigger.
One more question. With the high and low fingers, are you colouring them in still?
Sometimes, depends on the student.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be really helpful if you do, if they need it. Yeah, just put a red or a blue 2 above it. Generally, the crotchets are using most of the bow, and then the staccato quavers are half and half. So in terms of the bow distribution, and the same at the beginning.
Going back to what you were saying about the finger patterns, you could say that for Musette as well, because although they're used to doing 2 different finger patterns for G major pieces like Etude, this is the first time we've got the D major piece that goes into the E string in Musette. So remembering that the G on the E string is going to be...
Yeah, definitely. It can be helpful to put the colours in. Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing to help with the bowing memory in Hunter's Chorus is that each new phrase starts on an up bow, and that's a nice way for also to have discussions, maybe in review, maybe not, about how long the phrases are, that you have 2 short ones. Then you get another up bow because it's a new phrase. And now we get a longer, more lyrical phrase. And that's the one that goes on. So you have sort of 3 short phrases, but the third phrase is more sort of lyrical slightly, and then the 4th phrase is much longer. Am I saying the right thing? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, the last one is the one that's elongated, and that's the kind of pattern that you see again and again in phrases, isn't it? 2 short ones and then a longer one, or 3 short ones and a longer one. They're generally not in a piece just all the same length because it's boring. So that can be a nice kind of general musicianship thing to bring in at this point. Any questions about any of that? Cool. If you ever have questions about bow distribution, the best way to answer them without asking them, to answer them by yourselves, is to look at a video on YouTube. All of these pieces are on my YouTube channel. You can see how I play them. So if you have questions about that, but also obviously feel free to ask.
With the musette, do you start at the tip of the bow?
Upper half.
Okay.
Not quite at the tip, but yeah, higher than the middle, I would say. I think most of Musette is kind of half the bow from the balance point to the 3/4 point. Good. All right, see you at 2:30. Thank you very much. Shall we have a row? you all very much.